You're listening to Fast Facts Perio Edition. And now, here's your host, Katrina Sanders.
Hello, and welcome to Fast Facts Perio Edition. This week, we are talking about something that is incredibly important to me, and that is the role of diet in periodontal disease. Okay, let's unpack this, friends, because if you're anything like me, when you were in dental hygiene school, you were taught to do nutritional counseling or dietary counseling on your patients. And I don't know, I feel as though the vast majority of the focus that I had when I was in hygiene school was this extreme study on the number of times that my patient, when I was doing a nutritional counseling skill eval or competency, because let's be real, that's really the only time that we actually looked at nutrition. But when I had to do a skill eval or a competency evaluation in front of my faculty, that I was focusing more on the number of exposures of fermentable carbohydrates and ultimately its relationship to caries. So we've all seen the Stefan's curve, right? Once we start to experience fermentable carbohydrates or anything that is going to drop the pH in the oral cavity down to a critical pH, that this is when we're concerned about demineralization of enamel at a pH of 5.5 or demineralization of cementum at around 6.5, 6.0 to 6.7, by the way. So 6.5-ish. So we're looking at those critical pHs, and this is really where we started to actively study nutrition. I feel like, and this is just me, but I feel like we missed the opportunity to actually have a deeper conversation about pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory diets and their role on periodontal disease. So we recognize that diet has an influence on inflammation, period. That is not new. It just seems so odd to me that this has not been a stronger focus. So this is what we're doing this week. Your perio-loving ginger, Katrina, is going to unpack, I just referred to myself in the third person. I'm going to unpack what it is that we understand about specifically pro-inflammatory diets and their role on our health. So let's talk about this. First of all, we know that there are two major types of inflammation: acute inflammation and chronic. So acute inflammation is a protective response of the body to injury or infection. You cut your finger, your body sends white blood cells to the area. You see a little bit of swelling, redness, you feel some pain, but this process is being done immediately, right? To immediately address an infection. Chronic inflammation, this is what we're talking about when we talk about periodontal disease. That chronic inflammation is triggered anytime that the body is trying to rid itself of some sort of a harmful substance. So this could be toxins, and this could be toxins from, tobacco habits. This could be endotoxins or exotoxins from periodontal pathogens, foreign invaders. We could see increased levels of chronic inflammation. Again, the body's triggered response to excessive fat, particularly around the abdominal area. Okay. So when we talk about pro-inflammatory diets, a pro-inflammatory diet is comprised of foods that have a higher inflammatory potential. These are foods like red meats, processed meats, organ meats. This could be things like refined carbohydrates, white bread, white rice, dessert. Oh, I know, right? Sweetened beverages, sodas, even sports drinks. So your pro-inflammatory potential, these pro-inflammatory diets are typically associated with a poor cholesterol profile. And this is where we start to see elevated risk for specific inflammatory diseases. Results right now are showing that individuals who consume a primarily pro-inflammatory diet have a 38% elevated risk of developing cardiovascular disease compared with those who consume an anti-inflammatory diet. Stay tuned. We'll talk about that in a quick second. These associations are also remaining true for obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, etc. Why is this important? because we are starting to expand out into looking at the association between the inflammatory potential of diet and periodontal disease risk factors. Well, it's just as you would assume. A research study published in April of 2023 in the Journal of Clinical Periodontology did come to the conclusion that there was an extremely high association with a pro-inflammatory diet and the risk of periodontitis. The hypothesis is supported that diet can influence the risk of periodontitis. What does that mean for us? That means that we have the opportunity to integrate nutritional counseling or dietary counseling for patients who are elevated risk for periodontitis, or what even about our patients who have periodontitis? So think about those types of patients. Number one, patients who have elevated risk for periodontitis are patients who have gingivitis currently. We know that gingivitis is the number one risk factor for the patient moving into periodontitis. So think about your gingivally diseased patients. The good news is you don't have an irreversible disease quite yet. There are things that you can do to manage and mitigate these things. For a patient who does have periodontitis, perhaps considering doing some counseling on anti-inflammatory foods. So let's take a look at these. Anti-inflammatory foods are broken up into a myriad of 3 different categories. The first are your fibers, okay? So we're talking about replacing refined grains with whole grains. This could be beans, nuts, seeds. We want to eat high fiber snacks like berries, apples, or carrots. Hummus is terrific. So we're looking at fruits and vegetables. And, one great suggestion or consideration for your patient is taking a look at their dinner plate and having half of their dinner plate filled with vegetables, which moves us into the next anti-inflammatory food category. The first one we just looked at was fiber. The second is our phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are going to be nutrients or foods like our green leafies, anything that has that texture to it. Red, orange, and yellow vegetables and fruits, dark leafy greens like kale, even spices like turmeric, curcumin, peppers, cinnamon, garlic, ginger, even onions, green tea, and black pepper. So you want fruits and veggies that are very rich in flavor and aromas, trying not to peel them because that is where you get a lot of dense nutrients. And even encouraging your patients to consider using different spices when preparing their meals. A short cook time on your fruits and veggies is going to be important. The longer that you cook those veggies, those fruits, the more nutrients leave the food. And then finally, looking at healthy fats, your monounsaturated fatty acids like your olive oils, canola oils, sesame oils, your omega-3s, so your fatty fishes like salmon and mackerel, and even like flaxseed or walnuts. So considering for your patient things like eating walnuts as a mid-morning or afternoon snack, using olive oil as a salad dressing or sauteing vegetables, or even considering sprinkling flaxseed or flax powder in cereals or smoothies. These anti-inflammatory foods have the potential to combat. And yes, I did forget to mention perhaps my favorite anti-inflammatory food, and that is wine. With that, thank you so much for joining me, Katrina Sanders, today as we looked at the importance of an anti-inflammatory diet and having a conversation with our patients about removing pro-inflammatory foods as a means of reducing their risk of experiencing periodontal disease. This has been another episode of Fast Facts Perio Edition with Katrina Sanders. Please feel free to reach me on Instagram at The Dental Wine Genist or on my website, www.katrinasanders.com. Cheers.